Hello and welcome to the Raw review here on Wrestling with Regret. And as you can see, I'm back home after my big holiday vacation in Oregon. It's good to be back among the comforts of home and also nice to kind of be back working full time on the YouTube thing again. I missed that feeling of working on it full time. Oh, the fun of wrestling YouTube never stops. Hope you had a chance to check out my ROH weekend vlog that took place last month in Baltimore and Philadelphia. I finally put that out on Sunday night. And speaking of Ring of Honor, I'll be with them again this weekend, my birthday weekend. In fact, I will be there in Atlanta Saturday night at Center Stage, and then Sunday in Concord, North Carolina for Honor Reigns Supreme. Should be a really fun weekend. It's going to be lit, as the kids say, and of course, as that sentence just left my mouth, I immediately regret saying that phrase. But anyway, let's begin with the Raw review. We get a recap of the wedding from last week, as if you forgot what happened then, and then we open up with some Brocky Brock time. We have not seen Lesnar since Survivor Series when he beat Rey Mysterio in the championship match, and so he is out there with Paul Heyman, and Heyman says, you know, no one is worthy enough to challenge Lesnar for the championship at the Royal Rumble, so screw it, Lesnar's going to be in the Rumble match itself at number 1, no less, and he plans to win the whole shebang-a-bang. And so it's a very intriguing idea, but there are some details missing there. First off, is the championship on the line, or is Lesnar just doing an exhibition kind of thing? If he actually wins, what does that mean for the WrestleMania title picture? Granted, I'm pretty sure he's not going to win the thing, but I think it's nice to know what the stakes are in a match like this, because it is kind of unprecedented, at least in this sense. If the championship's not on the line, it's not the same circumstances it was in 2016 when Roman Reigns defended the championship in the actual match itself. So I'm curious to see how they're going to build this thing. We'll see how it turns out. But Lesnar as a champion, being in the Rumble match itself at number 1, I think that's definitely newsworthy. On commentary, they toss over to Sarah Schreiber backstage, who's going to be interviewing Rey Mysterio, but instead we just cut right to Rey Mysterio yelling at the camera in Spanish. Then Sarah Schreiber comes up to interview him. What was that? And then Rey, once again, thanks Dominic, his son, for pulling him out of his near retirement funk last year. Says he will beat Andrade for the U.S. Championship. That match is up next. It's a rematch from the last match they had at Madison Square Garden when Andrade won the title. Vic Joseph uses the phrase, the title could slip through his hands about 40 times throughout the course of this matchup here. Rey almost wins. He gets a 3 count, but Zelina puts Andrade's foot on the ropes, so the match is restarted. Near the end, Rey is hucked off of Andrade's shoulders, and he falls right into Zelina. Then we get a very awkward ending to this matchup here, where I think Rey is supposed to be kind of selling the moment of having knocked out Zelina for a while, then goes back into the ring, then eats a hammerlock DDT. But no, the order is way off. Instead, Andrade just throws Rey into the steps, then brings him right back in, probably too soon, is about to go for the hammerlock, and then John Cone, the referee, just breaks it up. And I think maybe his first, is Rey hurt or something? No, Rey has to go back out there and sell the, oh no, Zelina, I didn't mean to hit you. Then he goes back into the ring, and then he takes the hammerlock DDT. That really took me out of it. I think the match was fine, and then that ending happened, and then when you watch it in the replays later in the show, they really did a good job cleaning that up. And here's what we meant to show you. Here's the order of things that we meant to, that was intended from that. So besides that, I think the finish was weird, but the match itself, right up until that point, was okay. And then to add insult to injury, Andrade rips Rey Mysterio's mask off yet again. I think it's the second or third time Andrade has done that to Rey since they started feuding last year. There's never been anyone, there's never been a masked wrestler, I don't think, who's had his mask removed to help drive a conflict or a storyline more often in his career than Rey Mysterio. But the fact that it's happened twice in a row by Andrade's hands, that seems a little lazy to me. Backstage, we see Samoa Joe and Kevin Owens being interviewed about Seth Rollins and the AOP, and they acknowledge apparently something that Seth said earlier in the day, we need to divide and conquer. When did he say that? Clearly wasn't on Raw. It must have been some kind of online exclusive probably. And so Joe wants to challenge Seth and the AOP to a 6-man tag team match. He says he's got a guy, and Kevin wants to know what's going on, but Joe says just relax. Then after the break, we get a counter promo from Seth and AOP. Seth says he's more of his god complex. He calls himself now the Monday Night Messiah, which is a pretty damn catchy nickname, I think. He calls himself a beacon of hope and says anyone who tries to step up and challenge us, well, the AOP is going to take care of it. Raw Tag Team titles up next as the Viking Raiders defend against the OC and the Street Profits. It's a pretty good match. There's not much for me to really say about it. I think if I look at the stuff that Street Profits and Viking Raiders did before they got called up on NXT, AOP, I think their work there, to me, it was a bit more dynamic and entertaining than what we saw in this one. Not to say it was a bad match. It was just, nothing really stood out to me, except maybe for when Montez and Ivar do dueling cartwheels earlier on in the match. It ends when Ivar hits the giant splash onto Carl Anderson to win and retain. Backstage, furthering the storyline for the main event, Kevin Owens really wants to know who the third man on their team is, because he says, I've done a lot of bad things to people in this company and I don't want it to come back and bite me, basically. So then Joe takes Kevin to this room where he's hiding. He pokes his head in, he likes what he sees and walks off, and Charlie Caruso, who's trying to get the scoop, is just completely flustered. We get some Becky Lynch promo time here. She begins to start to doubt her ability and wonders if she should just start listening to the people backstage who are trying to look out for her, and should she really challenge Asuka to this match when she's never been able to beat her. She then tosses to this hype package showing the history between them since the Rumble of last year, and so it shows that Becky has been unable to defeat Asuka in any kind of competition. So then, as Becky's about to talk again after the video plays, Asuka comes out, starts like just running her mouth and talking trash to Becky in Japanese while she's making her way down the ramp. She gets in the ring, she gets maybe one word out, and then Becky just like pops her right in the face and then walks off with a smile on her face. Like that was all right to me. I feel the promo package did a much better job telling the story than them being in the ring at all could have done. And I think it's a good way to try and, dance around the fact that maybe speaking in clear English is not Asuka's biggest strength. We heard her promos when she was a babyface like a year or two ago in the build with Charlotte, and those weren't very well received, I don't think. So probably it's a good idea to have her just stick to Japanese with a little bit of broken English in the middle of the Japanese like she was doing on Monday. And then, basically before she really gets a chance to really drive the point home, Becky hits her. That was okay, I guess, but I think the promo package was probably the better part of that segment than the live part. Backstage, Mojo Rawley approaches Eric Rowan. He asks politely to see what's just hiding there under the burlap in the kennel, and Rowan lets him do it, and then Mojo peeks in there and is mortified at what he sees. He just is spooked and runs off. Elsewhere backstage, Andrade is being interviewed and he's asked if he went too far against Rey Mysterio. He's cutting a promo in Spanish, but before he can finish, he gets beat up by Rey Mysterio, who then grabs his mask. We see the back of his head during the fight, and Zelina's screaming her head off, and so then Rey puts the mask back on, and so he's got his full powers back and everything. So this feud is clearly not done yet. The aforementioned Eric Rowan taking on some local talent. We don't get to hear this guy's name. Pretty short match. Rowan predictably destroys the jobber, and then afterward he grabs the guy and shoves his face into the kennel, and then we see the jobber running off with what looks to be blood on his face. So what the heck is in that cage? When Mojo first peeked into it earlier, I thought it was maybe a severed head or something, but now it's able to attack, and it made the guy's face red and kind of bloody. So what could really be in there? Maybe it is Misty the Arctic Fox for all we know. I'm also curious, what was the turning point? Because before, in the weeks leading up to this, Rowan was so protective and just did everything he could to prevent people from even touching the kennel, let alone looking into it. And now all of a sudden he wants people to look into it. Is he just tired of resisting? Is he just kind of okay, well, I'm tired of it now. I'm going to unleash this on you people because you couldn't leave well enough alone. That to me is pretty intriguing. I think it's, the fact that now we have this turn, it's it makes me wonder, well, what set that off? But now maybe we'll see where this goes. And now the intrigue for me has been revived a bit. AJ Styles going against Akira Tozawa next. Nice to see Akira getting a lot of opportunities here on Raw the last couple of months. Styles dominates Tozawa here, and it's pretty much a squash match. Styles even using some of Randy Orton's trademark moves to get into his head. He beats Akira with the RKO, does the Orton pose in the corner, and that's pretty much that. They're going to be fighting next week on Raw. And then as AJ's going up the ramp, we see a guy in a suit get in the ring and then just gets pounced on by security who's been chasing him this whole time. The camera pans off, you're not supposed to see that. We cut to break. We come back to break, and then we see Bobby Lashley and Lana make their way down to the ring. And who's in the ring? The guy in the suit who was just accosted by security. It was the officiant from the wedding last week. This alone raises a whole bunch of questions. So was him running into the ring and getting beat up by security, was that planned to show it? Why was he running from security if he was part of the show? Why did security not know he was part of the show? So many questions. Why was this happening in the middle, at the tail end of a segment happening? Well, you know, usually for the TV stuff, they're giving cues to come out after like the camera is off the ring or something, and it just happens, it overlaps, which makes me think it was also kind of intentional. Like, it reminds me of something I saw very recently when I was doing a classic pay-per-view review. You had this fan running in the TNA show, and it looked really real for a second, and then the longer you look at it and you pull the layers back, you can tell, oh, it's a work. So maybe that's what's happening here, but why? Anyway, Lana and Lashley want to get the whole wedding over with, so now the officiant has emergency power in the state of Oklahoma, in his words, and he pronounces Bobby and Lana man and wife, and so they kiss, and then Lana cuts a promo. She says she's sad, but it's not anyone's fault, but everyone on earth, she says, who does not want to see them be married. Lashley talks some trash about Rusev for a bit. Then we see Rusev on the Titantron in a very obvious green screen in front of the beach, and like Rusev says, oh, I'm taking a honeymoon of my own because you guys want to delay your honeymoon. But like, are we supposed to believe he actually is on the beach? Because it's a very obvious green screen. But be that as it may, Rusev is very entertaining here, calls them Mr. and Mrs. Bob, and then he introduces a slideshow from the wedding last week, and we see all the chaos therein. There's Liv Morgan's interference, Rusev popping out of the cake and beating Lashley up, face full of cake for Lana and everything. Then Rusev just sits there and makes some faces to the camera. He does kind of this thing as the Rusev Day. Why is he doing the feeding thing as the Rusev Day chant's going on? Anyway, we then see Lashley about to say something, then Lana cuts him off, starts screaming at Rusev. Lashley actually tells Lana to shut up, and then tells Rusev, you know, next week we'll have a match, and whatever balls you have left, I'll like pull them out and serve them to you, basically. And then we hit play on the VTR deck to get the second Rusev video, where he goes, no, I'm the Bulgarian Brute again next week. So dramatic change in character here, where he's going to go back to being his old self, and he'll beat Lashley up good and what for next week on Raw. You know, this cannot match the magic of the wedding from last week, which I said on the Raw review was both, you know, so bad it's good, but also just objectively a bad segment. So it's kind of like it had a bit of both, the good and the bad for me. But I thought Rusev was very entertaining nonetheless. We saw some cracks already begin to form between Lana and Lashley. We'll see where this goes. I mean, next week they're going to be fighting, so we'll see how it goes. R-Truth is being interviewed backstage. Apparently he broke the record for the number of championships won in the company this past weekend or whatever, so he doesn't really get any words in until Liv Morgan literally appears from behind his back, and she basically declares that she's going to be in Rusev's corner next week again, as he's going against Lashley, and so we'll see more of that confrontation between Liv and Lana. Hopefully we'll see some more kind of like storyline development, get some follow-up on just what the story is between those two ladies. Our next match, so to speak, is Charlotte Flair versus Sarah Logan. It never really gets started though. Logan jumps Charlotte before the bell rings. They fight in and out of the crowd for a minute. Back on the outside, like Logan like takes Charlotte's rope and just kind of like whips it down the ground, like stomps on it and everything. And then Charlotte ultimately wins the breakout, so to speak. You know, I think Sarah hit X during Charlotte's entrance, and so then Charlotte wins the breakout sequence, puts her robe back on, and just kind of poses over Sarah here. You know, I think it was kind of disappointing as someone who I like to see Sarah Logan wrestle. We haven't really seen her on TV in any capacity in a while, so kind of sad we didn't get to see a proper match. But it did do a really good job of building Charlotte up as a big like killer going into the Women's Rumble match. We see some more of the fun-loving badass Drew McIntyre as he takes on No Way Jose. Before the match begins, Drew takes out a few of the Rosebuds, then he takes out Jose pretty quickly with the Claymore after the match begins. Drew cuts a promo, and in the middle of the promo, hits another Claymore on Jose. He doesn't drop the mic at all, so that was kind of an impressive moment there. He says he is going to be in the Rumble match. And like I said last week, I really enjoy this version of Drew McIntyre. You know, he still can be a badass when he wants to be. Like, he should be a killer. Like, he's doing heelish things, like beating up the conga line or whatever, but he's still like, he's got this kind of like fun-loving nature when he cuts promos now. I think it's a really good combination because he's still a brutal self with a bit of humor. He doesn't take himself too seriously, and I like this. This, like, to me, is just like, I see such a star in this kind of character. He's not forced, he's not hokey like John Cena in the early days, or Sheamus when they're trying to make him like John Cena, or Roman Reigns when they try to make him like John Cena. He just feels really authentic when he's doing that stuff, and to me it works. And so yes, please, more of this version of Drew. I'll say it again. Hey look, 2 weeks in a row where Aleister Black wrestles on TV as he takes on Shelton Benjamin. A short and sweet match, Aleister wins the Black Mass, but the real story is what happens afterward when Bud Murph runs in and jumps Aleister from behind, beats him up in the timekeeper's area, does the sit on the barricade while the referees tend to him. So big shots fired here. Their feud is clearly not over yet, so I want to see where this escalates and where it goes. My question is, wouldn't it be awesome if this were for a title? In your main event, Seth Rollins and the AOP take on Smojo, KO, and The Big Show. Yes, Paul White, Big Show, whatever you want to call him. He's making his first appearance on Raw in over 2 years in a wrestling capacity. I don't think anyone could have called Big Show as the third man in this group here. Big Show gets the hot tag near the end of the match, and the crowd is just alive for it. Say what you will about Nostalgia Act and the overuse of legends and the over-reliance on legends. The fans like to see the Big Show. They were popping for him in the hot tag, big chant to the Big Show and everything. He goozles both members of AOP, but Seth hits him in the back with a chair, so the match is thrown out. So ultimately, though, Big Show stands tall for hitting the KO punch on Seth. And then, just before we fade to black, we get a quick rundown of Raw next week, and they've already announced, oh, by the way, next week it's going to be a rematch here, but a fist fight is what they're calling it. And that was a really quick turnaround. They didn't even get anyone's consent or nothing. My final grade for this week's Raw is a B- once again. This show was weird to me. Maybe it's because I'm a little under the weather, and so I was kind of in a bit of a fog as I was watching this show, but there wasn't that much of the show that I really didn't like. Really, it was the ending to Ray and Andrade to open the show. That was really awkward, kind of put the brakes on the flow of that matchup. And then seeing the Efficient getting beaten up before the commercial break, why was that? Because the way they shot it makes me think it might have been a work, but why was it a work? That was just a real head scratcher. But man, besides that, they really threw a lot at you on this show. No huge oh my god moment, except maybe for the Big Show reveal, which I thought was kind of cool, but they just built a lot of stuff on this week's Raw. They had so many people on display, even as something as little as Sarah Logan being involved and everything. Just they showed so many people and they advanced so many different angles. It just felt different somehow in a way. Just the way the structure was, it didn't feel like a cookie cutter show of Raw. The promos felt better. The action and the storytelling, I think, was weaved together better than in most weeks. Like I said, this episode didn't really blow me away, but I was impressed with just how much they put in there. I was entertained for the most part. A pretty solid episode overall. But let me know what you thought about Raw this week in the comments section below, and be sure to give it a letter grade by going to the iCard in the corner of your screen. I'm Brian Zane, and I'll see you next time.